Well, if you're sitting your NG1 or IG1 exam, you should know that NEBOSH love to ask questions about first aid needs assessment, assessing or reviewing the level of first aid provision in a workplace. Let's take a look at this question. This is a fairly common type of question where they would say something like, what would you consider in your review to determine if first aid provision is realistic and proportionate at the warehouse? So what they're asking you there is, what are you looking at? What are you thinking about when deciding whether the level of first aid provision is enough or not? What do you have to consider when deciding how many first aiders you need? Do you need 1 or do you need 20? Do you need a defibrillator? Do you need a chemical shower? Do you need a first aid room? Do you need special stuff? Like, how do you decide? Now, it's not asking for details on first aid procedures. It's not asking on how first aid should be done. It's not asking you to say what goes in the first aid box or even what training should be delivered. It's not asking for that. It's just asking you, what do you consider when you are assessing the first aid provision, the first aid needs? And this is something which is taught in your course. So if we take a look at the Compassa course materials, here they are. Here's the study book. Now these are not the Compassa materials. This is just a study book for the Compassa materials, but a fantastic reference document for your exam. We will go to the first aid bit. So let's go element 3. We know first aid is in element 3. It's right at the end. It's the very last thing in element 3. So we'll go there. And we're looking for, there we are, deciding the first aid arrangements. Deciding if the first aid provision is realistic. Yeah, it's close enough. It's close enough. What it's asking is, how do we decide on the first aid arrangements? What to consider when deciding on first aid needs in a workplace. And so basically it's, how do you decide in assessing their needs? How do you decide how much first aid to put in place? How many first aiders and so on. And so here we've kind of got, I wouldn't say you've got the answers to the question here, but you've got the things that should be considered. What you now have to do is link those things to this particular scenario, to this warehouse. And not everything is perhaps relevant to this. Not everything in here is necessarily relevant. Here it talks about traveling workers, and we probably don't have any traveling workers in the warehouse. We probably don't have any remote off-site workers. We might not have any lone workers. So not everything is relevant to this particular scenario. So just be careful with that. And you have to link these themes to the scenario in question, using relevant information from the scenario to back up your answers as you go along. But this, kind of broadly, kind of gives you something to work with. So let's take a look at the scenario and see what we can come up with. Hey, sorry to interrupt the video. I hope you're finding this useful. If you want more information, we've got loads of free information on our YouTube channel. If you go into our channel playlists, you'll find a whole playlist called the 12 Steps to Smashing Your NG1, IG1 NEBOSH Exam. And it'll go through the 12-step process that our students follow to get some of the highest pass rates in the NEBOSH e-learning industry. If you would like even more help, then you can head over to our website, compassa.co.uk, click on NEBOSH Exam Help, and you'll also find study books that you can download for both the national and international general certificates. And without further ado, let's get back into it. I'm going to highlight what I think is relevant. We've got a 16-month redevelopment of a derelict office block into residential flats in an urban area. Entering its busiest phase, multiple contractors on site, including demolition teams, scaffolding specialists, electricians, general builders. 45 workers are on site at any one time, with numbers expected to fluctuate slightly over the coming weeks. So firstly, I will consider the number of workers on site at any one time. Why? Because that's one of my considerations. It says here, the greater the number of employees, the more first aiders will be needed. My answer, there are 45 workers on site at any one time. This number will fluctuate slightly and could go over 50. The more workers you have on site, the more first aiders you will need to cover them. Now, I'm tempted to go a little bit further with this, because if you've looked at your course materials and if you've studied this, you will know that there are ratios of how many workers to how many first aiders. So let's just take a look at the ratios. Now, this is a construction site, so that's high hazard. We'll look here. High hazard, construction, there it is. So this is a construction site. Hang on, didn't my question say warehouse? Yeah, change that. Told you it wasn't perfect. Construction site. There you go. Good thing I don't write real exam questions. So this is a construction site, and at the moment we're here, but actually we're kind of more like we could be here very easily. So we could make the recommendation that right now, at the moment, we need at least one emergency first aid at work or first aid at work trained first aider. But if we go over 50, we're going to need one first aid at work trained first aider for every 50 or part thereof. Or part thereof. Does that mean we need two then? Oh my goodness. All right, let's write this down to cover them. According to the HSE guidance on first aider ratios, we will need at least one emergency at work first aid trained person or one first aid at work trained person to cover all 45 staff. I'll say construction is a high hazard industry. However, if we fluctuate and go over 50, we will need at least one full first aid at work trained person plus another for every 50 or part thereof. That's so wordy, isn't it? Part thereof above that. So I'll need one first aid at work person for the first 50, and then if we go up to, like, say 55 or even 52, that extra 2 means we need an extra person, an extra first aider. My goodness. Now within that, we've already got some marks there. Within that, because we've shown understanding of what it's about the number of people. And then we've taken that further by using the HSE guidance and actually calculated how many first aiders we would need. And well, I suspect there are going to be, 1 or 2 marks in addition. So you've probably got 3 marks there in total. Hey, sorry to interrupt. If you're regretting your choice of course provider and you'd wish you studied with me instead, there's no problem. You can. Why don't you head over to Google right now and Google Compassa Rescue. Search for that and go to our rescue package. This is available for both international and national general certificate students. Perhaps your course is expired. Perhaps you've failed one of the assessments and you don't know what to do next. Perhaps you're just not happy with the level of teaching or support you're getting from your course provider. In that case, come check out the rescue package and click on Apply Now. We will offer you a very, very special discount so that you can get access to our full general certificate course with all of my tutor support, all of our mock exam support, NG2, IG2 project support, all of our video tutorials, study books, PDF guides. You will get everything that we offer to our own students. And then you will have a chance of joining us with some of the highest pass rates in the NEBOSH e-learning industry. Let's get back to the advice. Now, one of the things I've just kind of spotted is that we are doing residential flats. And so we have floors on the building, don't we? We have multiple floors. I don't know how many floors. I don't think it says. It sounds like it's 16 months. So it's actually it's quite a big project, this. We need to ensure that we don't just have all the first aiders on the ground floor or all the first aiders on the top floor, because then it's going to take ages for first aiders to reach an injured person. We may have to consider putting first aiders, one in the top half, one in the bottom half, or make sure we've got maybe one first aider per floor even. So let's write that down. This is a project over multiple floors in a block of flats. We must ensure there is proportionate coverage across the whole building, and we do not concentrate all first aiders in just one part of the building, e.g. ground floor or offices outside. Done. Let's move on to the next bit. We've got the shift patterns. They come up. Work takes place across 2 shifts, starting 6:30, finishing at 8 p.m. Wow, okay. The skeleton crew, site security, plant technicians remain overnight. Some teams work weekends, depending on progress. Oh, okay. Busy. We need to ensure all shifts are covered. Both the daytime shifts and nighttime needs to be covered, and weekends need to be covered. And how many first aiders you provide on those shifts depends on how many people are on site, of course. But the key point is all shifts must be covered. All shifts must have some first aid provision, including the 2 day shifts and the skeleton crew at night, as well as the weekend workers. Done. Carrying on. What have we got? The site includes elevated work areas, confined spaces and basement levels, regular use of cutting tools, power platforms, temporary electrical systems. Right. We should consider the types of hazards that people are exposed to, because those hazards create certain types of injuries. And so the first aiders you have should be trained to deal with the types of injuries you would normally expect on this particular site. So here we have electrical systems, which means we have to make sure people are trained to deal with electric shocks. We have cutting tools, which means you're going to have cuts, quite nasty, deep cuts. And you may also have like sparks and ejected materials, which means eye injuries potentially as well. So let's write that down. We should consider the types of hazards in this workplace, which include cutting tools, which could lead to work on electrical systems, can lead to electric shock. These types of injuries can be expected, and first aiders should be trained to deal with them. And you may get 1 or 2 marks, or maybe even 3 marks for all of that. You know, by giving, this is why I recommend you use the P principle, because when you use the P principle, point, evidence, explanation, right, here I'm using evidence. I'm using evidence, right, it says it here, you should support your answer using relevant information from the scenario. I'm making the general point that we should consider the hazards, because those hazards lead to certain types of injuries. But then I'm supporting that point with information from the scenario. We've got the cutting tools, we've got the electrical systems. Depending on how the marking scheme is written, and I don't know what the marking scheme is for this at all, so I'm just guessing here based on my experience, but this is worth at least 1 mark. But you could get additional marks maybe for your good use of examples from the scenario to support what you're saying. So there could be an extra mark for the cutting tools could lead to eye injuries. Right? That's an example. It might be worth a mark. It might not be though. But the key point is, when the question says support your answer using relevant information, there's a clue there. Support your answer using relevant information from the scenario. That's what you're going to have to do when you have a proper job anyway, isn't it? You have to, if you tell your boss something, you better bring evidence to your boss to persuade your boss that what you say is actually true. It's just a life skill, this. It's not a NEBOSH skill. It's just communication. Anyway, let's do one more. What have we got down here? We've got this past 3 months. We've got 2 recorded reportable injuries: a fall from height involving a scaffolder, laceration to the hand requiring stitches, several minor injuries, cut, sprains, eye irritation from dust also been noted, site diary not formally reported. So bang, all of that is completely relevant. If you go to the course materials, it will say something like the previous history of accidents. There you go, previous history of accidents, accident trends. Will identify the most common types of accidents frequency. So you should plan to deliver first aid on your most common types of accidents. The organization's history of accidents will be useful for planning what types of injuries should be expected in future, so we can ensure we have the correct training and equipment to treat these. Something like that. So I've given 6 answers so far. Really, I want to be aiming for 10. I want to aim for 10, but depending on the marking scheme, I may already have close to 10 marks there, I don't know. But always try to give as many short paragraphs as there are marks available. Ideally go further. Can I get 11, 12, 13 paragraphs down there? And as long as each one makes a good point and is supported by evidence, I mean, you could maybe get 15 marks on that question, which means you get the full 10. And if you get the full 10 on this question, how close are you to the pass mark now? You only need 45 points to pass. You got 10 here. You're 20, 25% there already. Isn't that wonderful? Anyway, I hope you found that super useful. Why don't you go check out our other videos, because we have loads more videos like this. And if you have any questions, please drop them in the comments below.